forming. And prompt engineering is one of those. And really, my intention behind all of these is to have them be a little bit shorter, a little bit more hands-on, and just showing a bit more on how to navigate and tackle through a lot of these things that are really either overlooked or might be just misunderstood when you're working in this context. So, first of all, gonna just dive right into prompt engineering and just giving an overall high level. And essentially, the big part of that is that AI is very bluntly transforming the way we work. And I know there's a lot of mixed opinions on this of whether or not it's good, whether or not it's bad, and you probably have your own impression formalized on that accordingly. The thing is that regardless of your opinion on it and how that's going to be influenced, there's a lot of data and research that's saying that it's going to be implemented some way, shape, and form, if it isn't already, into your everyday work. And the importance of that cannot be understated because as this becomes more and more part of the status quo, it's something that you're going to have to learn how to use effectively in order to further do your job and your everyday activities. And there's a lot to that. And that's the whole point of this course. It's the fact that prompt engineering, which in my mind is just a very fancy way of saying I know how to write prompts well and communicate with a bot, is something that anyone can learn. And it's really not as complicated as one may think. It's actually fairly straightforward. And the whole point of what we're going to be going through here is just how to do that from a theory perspective. Yes, we're going to have some tactical examples, but what I've seen a lot is that quite a bit of the education around prompting, at least, is very, very tactical. What I mean by that is that you essentially have I have this problem, and now I need to solve this, and how do I do that? And that is something that's really helpful for a lot of people. And I know that because it's giving you a very tactical example that allows you to accomplish what you're going for. The challenge with that, though, is that it's not necessarily something that is super scalable or really translatable across different problems. And that's what we're going to be diving into here. We're going to be focusing more on the theory and how to be paying attention to prompting and what you need to include in it from a more theoretical perspective so that you can take this idea and apply it more broadly across different challenges that you're faced with. So let's break this down. Prompt engineering, what is it? Ultimately, it's the concept of interacting in a chat-like interface, so ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, Siri, etc., in order to accomplish an end result. It's powered by two things, what you've probably heard as LLM, or large language model, as well as NLP, or natural language processing. What do these two terms mean? NLP or natural language processing, is essentially the concept of human language and how we speak, how we communicate information, and how that is understood by others. NLP is something that is actually programmed into a lot of these tools so that they can understand what we're saying, frame it with the context that we're trying to apply, and then bring it into their tools in order to provide you with the output you're looking for. The LLM, the large language model, is all the information and data that this bot is trained on. So NLP and LLM go hand in hand because the NLP is you telling the bot, I want you to accomplish this, and the bot understanding it. LLM is taking that information and actually doing something with it and powering everything behind the scenes. And in order to do that, there's a lot of things you need to keep in mind. And the most important thing is how you're structuring your prompts. And structuring your prompts, in my mind, boils down to a couple key areas. And these key areas are going to be things that I cover uh, at length over the next several weeks. And the first thing you want to keep in mind is your purpose. The purpose is really what you're looking to accomplish through the prompt itself. Talk about what your end result is. Provide information about what you want the process flow for your prompt to accomplish. Anything that effectively articulates your end goal should be drilled into the prompt purpose. The second bit, which is the most important, is context. Context cannot be understated because there's a lot involved with these tools and they're extremely powerful, but unless they really understand where you are at that moment, you're not going to get a good result. Because these bots, like lots of people who you're working with, aren't necessarily going to be able to know exactly what you're looking for when you first meet them. You need to provide them with as much information as you can so that they can have that in order to inform it. So, for example, say you're a project manager and you're looking to put together an overall timeline for a particular project. You don't want to just go to the bot and say, hey, look, I'm building a project. I'm building a project in Jira and I want to have a timeline. You're going to get something, but it's probably not going to be as good as if you go to the bot and say, hey ChatGPT, I want to be building a timeline for this project on the development of this new piece of software. This software is going to encapsulate X, Y, and Z materials. We have this amount of resources allocated to it. We're looking to ship it by this day, and this is where we are in the current timeline, and here's kind of what I'm thinking it's going to look like structured week by week. Adding those additional layers of context go a huge way to informing the bot on what you want to do. Once you provided that context, you want to provide the requirements. And this is an extension of the context aspect, because while you're explaining all the background information within the context, the requirements is telling it the forward-thinking information. So based off of this information, create this thing in this way. It all works together. And you want to make sure that you have as much of that information articulated in an effective way as you can. And then lastly, consider the format. The format is what's going to be referred to as the output of what you're getting. Is it something that's going to be an image? Is it going to be text? Is it going to be some kind of graphic? Is it going to be HTML or other related other related code of some kind? That format is something that you really want to provide it so that the bot is able to provide you with the correct output. And you can do that a number of ways. And so using that, that's kind of really the foundation that you want to start working with in order for these tools to be effective. Now, using that information, let's just start diving right into it. So in front of me, I have ChatGPT, and you're all experienced with using this, and if you haven't, this is a good place to go ahead and begin. You'll notice that I've included the four main components of the purpose, context, requirements, and format in order to get us started. And the whole point of this is to really go through what you're, like a practical exercise, if you will, based off everything we were talking about. So again, as a reiteration, our purpose is our goal. This is what we want to achieve as part of the outcome. Context is the background. This is all the information we have about the particular task at hand that we can provide to the bot so we can move this forward. Requirements are our needs. These are the things that we need to have done as part of this. And the format is that point. This is us specifically asking for how we want to have this thing completed. Now, as we go into these exercises, one thing that you're going to notice is that the conversation I have with the bot is exactly that. It is a conversation. It is not a quick, hey, help me do this thing, and then we're done. it's very, very much focused on going back and forth with the bot in order to take my original idea, refine it down with more and more context in order to get the intended result that I'm looking for. That's going to be something that has a degree of, we'll call it exchange, until I'm actually able to get the final result. Now, for this example, I'm actually going to be doing something a little bit not business related at all. And this is effectively going to be something that my wife and I have been going back and forth on, trying to figure out, our weekly date night. And with this weekly date night, sometimes you want to figure out what you're looking to do for it, whether that's eating out, eating in, doing something at home that doesn't involve food, or doing something out. I don't really know. And so these are all things that are existing in like my mind, our mind, and that's kind of the context that I'm looking for. So using this initial template that I was talking about, just like the purpose, context, requirements, and format, I'll just keep that down here as we go ahead and start writing this. But essentially, the first thing I want to open up with my prompt is what I'm looking to do. So I am planning tool, spouse, and use. The spouse and I can use ad hoc to determine something to do. With that one sentence, I have now established my purpose. I've told it what I'm looking to do. And now that it has this information, the next step, where I'm going to be spending most of my time, is actually providing the context. And the context is where we start diving into the nuances of what I'm looking to do. And the next thing here is going to be probably telling it what exactly I want it to look like. I want date night planner. Based on our selection, we will make it. So this is basically the overall structure of what I'm looking for. I want the planner to have 5 different options, and based off of those options, want to make a decision. I'll just paste those decisions in because I have a little bit of reference document on the side. Now, the last little thing that I'm going to be throwing in here is a few more bits that I'm just pulling in from another document here just to have reference. So, as we look through this prompt as a whole, we now see that I'm looking to have a date night planner in order to determine something to do with my spouse. This accomplishes our purpose. I want the date night planner to have the 5 different options to choose around, and based on our selection, we will make a decision. I provide those 5 options, and then I'm now telling it to ask me a series of questions in short spurts so that we can refine the necessary components of the chat. Everything I've done here only fulfills purpose and part of the context. You can argue that I've provided some of the requirements by asking it to provide me a series of questions in the same way that you can argue that it's partially the way for the output and format. However, I would argue that much of this is still around the conversation of setting up and defining the context. So now that I've put this into play, we're going to go ahead and throw that into the bot. And what I will expect is for it to say, hey, here's what I'm looking to do, and here's some of the questions that I'm going to ask you in order to figure it out. And based off of what we're describing, this is exactly what kind of hypothesizing that this would look like. And now, going forward, the best approach is to do 2 things with this dialogue. The first thing is to look at it and firstly confirm whether or not it has an understanding of what you're looking for. So in this case, this is exactly what I'm looking for. And now that I provided that, I've now given the bot feedback that we're going in the right direction. And so in order to do that, I'm going to provide it answers to its questions. So answering your questions. And for this, we'll keep something very simple so we can continue going along. Are there any dietary restrictions? Nothing worth noting. And then for 2, it's asking for budget range for activities, set ranges. We can do in range increments. Generally, be less than 100. Increments that would be ideal. And then typing in a 3, specific time restraints. Be on weeknights and on weekends. Restraints. And for this as well. And so now I provided a few answers here, and yes, I've been very, very brief, but I would encourage you that when you're doing something like this, that you expand as much as you can on answering the questions. Because the more information that you're providing to it, that's that much more information that the bot's going to have tied to the context in order to get you where you want to go. And as we continue with this, this might start triggering other aspects for you. And so as I type through this, it's like, okay, look, I want to have a date night tool. It asked me these questions. I now had an aha moment of like, wait, I should probably tell this thing where I live and the kinds of things that we like doing. So that is a perfect opportunity for you to really refine, even right here with this bot, preemptively before it asks the questions. And then, so just for this, I'll just go ahead and put that, and I'll just have that for added context. Geographic region will be in San Diego, California, and live in Carmel Valley. Broad enough, it's fine. So one activities would be about 30 minutes or so away for these activities. And additionally, we'll do this for just myself, not for scale ways. So let's these ideas to us. Interests and options. So now that I've answered those questions and provided additional context, it's going to read this information and it's going to further refine the kinds of questions that it's asking me. And the whole experience of this conversation, as you can see, is very conversational. And this reinforces the concept of NLP. NLP is essentially the bot's ability to read through my chat here, reason what I'm understanding, and then it uses the large language model to take what its understanding is, do some research on my behalf, and provide me a response, again, using NLP, that I can understand and interact with. And that's how these two concepts interrelate in order to create generative AI. And generative AI, which I'm realizing now didn't define earlier, is essentially the ability to create something based off of initial parameters. Versus, consider like traditional. If you want to consider like traditional AI or traditional computing, you essentially have it. You set predefined parameters. If A, B, and C, then do D. Based off of this, it's a lot more dynamic and can create things on the fly. And now, bringing that back to this conversation, we've now seen that in this dialogue back and forth, we've now gotten some more information. And based off of all of this information, we can continue the conversation. This is something that should be used throughout all of your efforts when you're utilizing these generative AI tools. It's a conversation. Go back and forth. Provide as much context as you can and refine that to the degree that you're able to so that you're able to get the intended output that you're looking for. There's a couple common challenges that I've noticed that I just want us to try and stay ahead of that is just worth keeping in mind. First one is unclear outputs. And what I mean by that is that if you're asking for an image at the back end, make sure you're clear that you're looking for some kind of an image so that ChatGPT can actually use the DALL-E feature. However, if you want it to be text, tell it that it's text. If you want it to be a separate document, ask it to be an artifact. Being very specific about what you want the end product to be is really going to improve your experience. The second thing is experiencing inconsistent results. And this is going to be something that's probably going to be present for a little while still as these tools continue to grow. However, one way that you can mediate that to a degree is being consistent in your voice, tone, and inquiries. So the more that you're able to articulate, here's what I want, here's the information I have, and here's the intended output, if you're able to do that in a very consistent and cohesive manner, you're going to have more consistent results. Versus if there's one chat where you say, not what's the capital, that's a bad example, but one chat where you're providing very little information and another chat where you maybe write a novel, you're going to get very different results, and those very different results are then going to be trained into the model. And the more that bad information gets trained in the model, the more likelihood that it may appear in your experience. So that's another thing to keep in mind. If something does not provide you the result that you're looking for, don't abandon it. Tell it that it's wrong. Tell the bot why it's wrong, and give a little bit of feedback of what you would hope to see in the future. By doing those 3 steps, you increase the likelihood of you being able to get the answer you're looking for right then and there, and you reduce the likelihood of this experience happening in the future for yourself or for anyone else. So as you're using HubSpot right now, and you may be utilizing the Breeze AI feature within it, please keep that in mind, because the more that you're able to do that within each of these tools, the better the experience you're going to have. The next thing is context limitation. And I know a huge part of this conversation is related to context, because ultimately the context and the information you're providing in is going to directly influence your output. Garbage in, garbage out, gold in, gold out, as the saying goes. Provide as much information as you can in the best way that you can, and you're more likely to have a better result. And the last thing you might experience is formatting issues. And formatting issues can largely be solved by providing context. If it's providing you with an image that you can't use, or even better, it creates some kind of a graph you can't use, tell it that so. Tell it, look, I need it in this way, so create your end product in this way. By addressing that in your output and your requirement steps, you're going to reduce the chances of you running into any formatting issues. So keep all of that in mind with everything you're kind of using to get started here. So just with that in mind, I'm going to leave everything else with a couple quick tips. Start simple. It's really that simple. Figure out what you want to accomplish, give it a little bit of context, and then provide it the requirements around it, and then tell it what you want it to be an output on. Be specific about each of those items. Tell the bot exactly what you want, and don't deal in gray areas. The machine is fairly black and white, and while it can understand some degree of gray area and philosophy, which, I have a philosophical bot that I have conversations with, which is actually quite fun. Dealing more in that binary direction is going to be much more helpful as you're getting started and it's building foundational context for you. Test and iterate. Can't be understated. as you're putting in prompts and having bad results, maybe consider changing that so that you can start focusing more on the ones that achieve you good outcomes instead. And lastly, document what works. Similar to what I was just mentioning. The more you're able to figure out what does and does not work on your behalf, the better your experience you're going to have. As I leave you with this, just want to thank you for your time today. Again, just keep practicing on it. It's going to take some time, but with that time, it's going to definitely improve a lot of the experience that you have today and well into the future. This is something that I'm going to be spending a lot of time on over the next few months and developing a variety of different course material and information that I'm hoping will be supplemental to enhancing your proctoring experience. So I hope this was helpful and looking forward to sharing more of this information with you all over the next few weeks. Till next time, have a good one, LinkedIn. Enjoy the rest of your day. We'll chat soon.